Joining me now on News9 Live is a very special guest from Israel. We are joined by former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. Mr. Olmert, thank you so much for speaking to us at a very difficult time for your country. First and foremost, my heartfelt condolences over the horrific loss of lives in Israel.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, I have to begin by asking you on the strikes that took place last night on the Al Ahli hospital in Gaza, where the Palestinian Health Ministry says hundreds of people have been killed, at least 500. Both Israel and Hamas are blaming each other for this attack, but it is being seen as the biggest escalation yet in the ongoing conflict between the two sides. There is a lot of anger following this attack on the Gaza hospital. There are protests taking place outside Israeli embassies in many countries. Are you concerned, sir, that this attack could change the narrative against Israel?
First of all, I have to say, in the most explicit and straightforward manner, after checking the event by all the different technological systems that we are absolutely confident that Israel didn't shoot that missile, that it was a misfired rocket by the Islamic Jihad, the part of which hit the nearby the hospital, which is the bunker of explosives and weapons of the Hamas, and that's why it exploded in such a way as it did and caused the deaths of quite a few people. I don't think that there were 500 people killed. This is a typical exaggeration of Hamas, but whatever the number is, we definitely are terribly sorry for the loss of life, but Hamas and the Islamic Jihad are responsible for it. By the way, President Biden, after watching all the evidence presented to him by the Israeli intelligence, said right now in Tel Aviv that he knows that we didn't do it. So this is the fact. The perception, of course, is different. And this is used very effectively by the different Arab countries, the extremist countries, the Iranians and the others, and by the Hamas itself. And I can understand that it is causing a lot of anger across the world, not just amongst the Arabs, but also amongst others. But again, I repeat, and I assume complete responsibility for what I say. And it can be, checked because it's on record. Israel didn't do it. How it will affect the circumstances now in the Middle East? Very much so, because it will be used by the Hamas to put all the blame on Israel, to try and divert the attention from the perpetration of atrocities which are committed by Hamas against Israeli citizens, and they will try to change the narrative of what's going on. But I must make it clear, while we didn't do it, while we are terribly sad for the terrible accident which caused the death of many people, that will not stop Israel from reaching out for the leaders of Hamas and doing what we need to do in order to remove the Hamas control over the Gaza district.
Okay, you are saying you're sorry for the loss of lives, but Israel didn't do it. Hamas and Islamic Jihad are responsible. Let me ask you this question, sir. Hamas undoubtedly displayed a lot of savagery and butchery in the manner in which they attacked Israelis. But what would you say to those people who are saying that Israel is collectively punishing innocent Palestinians for the actions of Hamas? because more than 3,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes. More than 1,000 of them were children.
Number one, I definitely regret the death of every individual, children and elderly people. But there is not any evidence that the numbers that they are talking about are accurate or real. They say you don't have any evidence, no one checked it. In the event of Israel, the 1,500 Israelis were identified to have been butchered and raped and beheaded. So we know the numbers, and all of them are citizens. There, I don't know whether these are 3,000 or 1,000 or 500. I regret every one of them, and I'm sad for every family. But the problem is this. The Hamas and the Jihad occupy the urban center of Gaza. They hide their bunkers as they did just below the hospital in Gaza. They have their bunkers, they have their command positions, they have their launchers of the missiles. All of them are in the center of town precisely in order to prevent Israel from reaching out for them or to accuse Israel for killing innocent civilians as a result of the attempt that we make to reach out for the murderers of Hamas. That's why what Israel asked from the people that live there to live down south into a relatively safer area, and Israel and the United States of America will provide them with all the humanitarian needs outside of the city in order to prevent any humanitarian crisis. And that's what we will do. But the only way for Israel to reach out for the Hamas without creating a massive collateral damage is to move people out of the center of the city. Otherwise, basically, what one can say is that, okay, we have the Hamas massacred and butchered. We try to move them out of the center of town so that we can deal with the Hamas and the murderers and the killers without causing collateral damage.
So I've spoken to some humanitarian workers, some of them are Palestinians, who have told me that even in South Gaza, Southern Gaza, there are no safe spaces. Buildings have been bombed there too. People have died in Southern Gaza too. And even though some tried to escape through the Rafah crossing with Egypt, they were not able to do so because, according to them, Israel bombed even the Rafah crossing. So they say, how do we move? The bombings are not allowing us to move.
Look, it's a war. It's not a game. And after having suffered this terrible blow to so many thousands of Israelis, with so many townships that were completely destroyed, and babies that were massacred, and the mothers that were raped in front of them and then shot to the head, we have to react. Now, when they complain about buildings being bombed, there are buildings being bombed after we check in advance that they are empty. Not only that we check, but we send leaflets to the residents in every building that we're going to bomb and demanding people to leave the buildings in order not to be hit by the bombing. So we are making every possible effort. It may be true that this is difficult. We didn't promise that it would be easy. So maybe there is a shortage of water and there is a shortage of food. It will be provided them as soon as possible. No one will die from the shortage of water or the shortage of food. We will, and the Americans agreed on a humanitarian corridor to provide them with all the humanitarian needs. But one thing we will not stop. We will not stop reaching out for the Hamas and killing out those who were responsible for this vicious attack because if we will not get rid of Hamas, there will never, ever, to the end of days, will be a chance for some reconciliation and some political process that everyone is aspiring for.
Okay, you say that our targeting of Hamas will not continue. But, sir, you've talked about agreeing to a humanitarian corridor. The reality is that Israel has been very strongly criticized for imposing a total siege on 2.3 million Palestinians. They are running out of food, water, fuel, power, and medicine, sir. Even hospitals don't have clean water. Hospitals don't have medicines and painkillers. I have spoken to humanitarian workers, sir, who are working in Gaza and the West Bank. And I want to quote to you what the Israeli Security Minister Ben Gvir has said. And
You
he's
have to
being
repeat.
strongly criticized. Can I just quote him to you, sir? Ben Gvir has said, the only thing that should be brought into Gaza is hundreds of tons of Air Force explosives, not a single gram of humanitarian aid. This is an Israeli minister. Do you agree with him, sir? Because people are very strongly condemning him.
It is a completely distorted description of the realities in the south part of the state of Israel, bordering Gaza. Nor in the context of the description about the events that are taking place in Gaza. It's true that we had to take measures of self-defense, and we are taking measures of self-defense now. There are explosives, there are bombs, and there will be, and it will continue in as long as we will not get rid of Hamas. But when the United States of America confirms that together with us, they are making enormous efforts to bring humanitarian aid to the people there, then that's what we do. And the fact that the Palestinians are blaming us for not doing it, this is part of the warfare against Israel, not only to massacre Israelis, not only to butcher children, not only to rape the mothers, but also to blame Israel for not providing them with food, when in reality we do quite the opposite. We provide them now with all the humanitarian needs, and we are doing it not by ourselves. You ask the President of the United States, he will confirm to you that we are making these efforts to provide the humanitarian needs of the people that were taken outside of the main center of Gaza into the southern part in order to save them from the Israeli attacks.
All right. Of course, the US president is currently in Israel and he has expressed full support for Israel. So, before this hospital attack, which you say was carried out by the Islamic Jihad, according to the World Health Organization, not Palestinians, but World Health Organization, 115 healthcare facilities in Gaza have been hit by Israeli airstrikes, leaving most of the city's hospitals out of operation. The question I want to ask you is, sir, are you concerned that Israel could lose the perception war?
I'm very much concerned about it. For years, many Arab countries, and unfortunately, as of recent period, the Russians seem to be joining Iran in supporting their effort. And many Muslim countries, they are all determined to defame the state of Israel and put all the blame on the state of Israel, ignoring entirely the fact that the perpetrators, the murderers, the killers are the Hamas organization. Had ISIS done it, had someone been critical of Israel for responding against ISIS, ISIS and Hamas are the same. Taliban and Hamas are the same. Al-Qaeda and Hamas are the same. This is a terrorist organizations. They have no interest in making peace. They don't have any interest in living alongside the state of Israel without fighting. Their DNA, the essence of the nature of these organizations is one. to attack Israelis, to kill Israelis, and to eradicate what they call the Zionist entity in Israel. We have the privilege and the right for self-defense. What we are trying to do is to defend ourselves. Now I'll tell you something which is more important. The Hamas complain about killing Palestinians. Hamas are responsible for killing Palestinians. When Hamas took over Gaza in 2007, they killed more PLO people than we ever did. They tortured more PLO people than we ever did. They threw PLO people, Palestinians, from the 14th floor of the hospital in Gaza to the ground, killing hundreds of them without any mercy.
All right. You think Hamas wants to eliminate the state of Israel?
Not I say. They say. They say. Listen to them. That's what they say.
Okay. Point taken, sir. They have said it. Point taken. But I want to ask you, sir, there are repeated calls now for a ceasefire because a lot of innocent Palestinians are dying every day. As we know, most of them are not Hamas. I'm talking about civilians. And humanitarian aid is running out. Is Israel willing to consider a ceasefire so that at least humanitarian aid can reach Gaza? Are you willing to consider a ceasefire?
They asked for ceasefire, of course. They killed the Israelis. Now they want to be protected from the Israeli reaction. I am not in that game. Israel is not in that game. We will not have any ceasefire with Hamas. We'll do every possible effort to save the lives of innocent people that are not involved. We will take measures to move them out of the battle zones so that we will focus on Hamas. But with Hamas, there is no room for ceasefire. They don't have the right to ask.
All right. You are saying absolutely no room for a ceasefire with Hamas, though the demands have come, like I said, from humanitarian workers also. I want to ask you this question again, sir. I'm just doing my job as a journalist and playing the devil's advocate. There was a lot of support, sir, and sympathy for Israel when those horrific and barbaric attacks were carried out on Israeli people by the Hamas. But now that a lot of Palestinians are dying in the Israeli airstrikes every day, many are asking, can you counter atrocities with atrocities? They are now, and I'm talking about the rest of the world, sir, not Hamas. The rest of the world is saying both sides are guilty of the same crime. Both Israel and Hamas are committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. They are also calling Israeli action a genocide of the Palestinians. How would you respond to that, sir?
I already did. What I ask is the simple question. Those who say that Hamas commit atrocities in a most outrageous manner, as you yourself have described before, what would they suggest Israel to do in order to punish the murderers and the killers? To sit still and to wait for another attack, or to react? If we have a right to react, then why do they complain? I mean, a certain thing has been completely distorted by the presentation of the chain of events. Israel was attacked. Israeli civilians were butchered and slaughtered and beheaded in the most terrible manner. Israel has to react. The Palestinians in Gaza, the Hamas, are using the citizens as a human shield in order to protect themselves and to put the blame on Israel. We are trying to change it, and we will change it, and we will prevent an unnecessary collateral damage to the maximum possible. But we will not acquiesce with the Hamas killers. There is no question about it, no matter how much we will be criticized by interested parties that are blaming Israel they're ready with their accusations against Israel even before we start the operation.
All right. You are saying that these are all interested parties who are criticizing Israel. So let me ask you a straight question, sir. Is there going to be a ground invasion of Gaza next?
You're so curious. You want to know everything.
I am, sir. I'm a journalist. It's my job.
I appreciate it. But I don't think I'm not in charge of the military plans. However, had I known the plans, I would have hesitated to share it with you because I don't think that we have to provide the Hamas with the specific information about what we are going to do. They may be caught in surprise as well, and I hope they will. And you'll have to accept that this is the only answer I can give you.
Okay, I think you said something interesting there. But here's the thing that I want to ask you in the context of a possible ground invasion. Let's say, hypothetically, Israel does go ahead with a ground invasion. There are some who are asking, sir, and these are military experts, not me, that could entering Gaza become a suicide mission for the Israeli military? Because Hamas, as we know, has this complex maze of tunnels under Gaza, and they use innocents as human shields. In this case, sir, they could use Israeli hostages as human shields. There are 200 hostages that they are holding. Is that not a big concern, sir?
This is the common wisdom, that they will use the human shield. If they use their own Palestinians as a human shield, why would they use the Israelis as a human shield? We are fully aware of that. And there's only one thing which I can't comprehend, is why some that you quote believe that they are entitled to do this, and we are not entitled to try and reach out for them in order to remove them once and for all from where they are. So you can imagine that we are fully aware of the dangers of a military operation, of the risks for the lives of Israelis, of the risks for the lives of non-involved Palestinians. And we will know how to deal with it, preferably with the minimum number of non-involved casualties and with the maximum number of Hamas terrorists being caught by us. And that's what we are planning.
Okay. Israel has a plan in place. They know how Hamas operates. So let me ask you this, sir. Many are asking, what is Israel's end game here? I know that you've said, your Prime Minister has said, we want to wipe out Hamas. But, sir, isn't it true that the leadership of Hamas, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it true that the leadership and the masterminds of those attacks on Israel are sitting far away in the safety and luxury of Qatar, while innocent Palestinians are getting killed in Gaza?
I can only say this, and I hope again that you will appreciate my careful expression.
Yes.
Regardless of where the leaders of Hamas are, we'll reach out for them, whether they are in Gaza or whether they are in other places. History shows that when we needed to get rid of killers, we knew where to reach them, even when they were not in Gaza. So you can trust that maybe they should be a lot more concerned about their own lives than they are, regardless of whether they stay outside of Gaza. And basically, again, what somehow disturbs me in the questions yet that you ask, and I understand that you are trying very hard to be the devil's advocate. You are definitely expressing the devil's attitude, but I know that it is not yours, that you are just
not my views, sir.
Role
yes.
As an anchor, and I respect it. Look,
thank you, sir. I appreciate your understanding. because it is my job,
No,
sir, to ask tough questions.
I know, and you are tough. Honestly, you are very tough. What you ask me basically is this: the leaders will be safe, and the Palestinians in the Gaza should not be the victims. So, what would you suggest Israel to do? Just leave it like that? Is the appropriate response of a healthy and self-confident society in dealing with murderers that are killing its own people? Or should we do something in order to reach out for them? It may be difficult. It may not be easy. They may be in all kinds of places which are not necessarily inside Gaza. But past record proves that sometimes we can even get to the places which are not Gaza and meet the people that are responsible and do what needs to be done to these people.
Israel will do what needs to be done. Sir, I don't know if you'd want to share this with me. Is retaking control of Gaza also on the agenda for Israel?
We're not interested in invading Gaza, and we will not stay in Gaza. We are making a military operation that needs to be done. We'll do what needs to be done, and we'll pull back. At the end, you ask me what is the end. I'll tell you what is the end. And I think I've been involved for the better part of my life in dealing with these issues. So I think that I'm relatively knowledgeable about what I think is the right course of action to come close to an endgame. We have to make peace with the Palestinians. And Palestinians, for me, is the Palestinian Authority, led by Dr. Mahmoud Abbas. I have been dealing with him, and I presented him with a peace plan, which subsequently everyone in the world, from the President of the United States to the leaders of Europe, all subscribed to the nature of this plan as a forthcoming and far-reaching peace plan. At that time, unfortunately, Mahmoud Abbas, who I dealt with on a very friendly basis for a very long time, failed to give a positive answer. And I know, as a matter of fact, from some of his closest aides, that they thought then, and they still think until now, that this was the greatest historical mistake of the Palestinians, that may have then reached an agreement with Israel on the basis of the traditional desires of the Palestinians. And they didn't do it. Still is the main objective. But in order to be able to achieve it, one has to relieve the Palestinians from the murderers that threaten them just as much as they threatened us. We have to get rid of them. If we will get rid of them, we will open up the opportunity for the Palestinian Authority to move forward rapidly towards a momentum of negotiations with the state of Israel. I have to add, for the sake of transparency and I think integrity, that the present Israeli government is not made to make peace with the Palestinians. It is made up of messianic groups, of extreme right-wingers, which are not interested in peace, which are interested in annexing the territories and expelling the Palestinians living there. They are not a majority in Israel. We are rioting now for the last 40 weeks, day in and day out, in the streets of Israel to get rid of this government and of these messianic forces. We'll get rid of them. We'll change the attitude of the Israeli government. We'll change the policy of the Israeli government. We'll move forward towards the Palestinian Authority. And we hope that we will find amongst them the courageous and honest leadership that will be ready to make the necessary accommodations in order to reach peace between us and them. So the end game is peace. The road to the end game must lead inevitably to the removal of Hamas from the center stage. And that's what we are trying to do now.
That is very wonderfully put. The end game is removal of Hamas and peace. And I appreciate the candor with which you've answered this question, sir, especially about the far-right government of Israel. Um, so, as I mentioned earlier, the US president is in Israel today. He has expressed full support for your country. But the Jordan summit, you must be aware, has been cancelled following the hospital attack. Uh, President Biden was supposed to meet the leaders of Jordan, Egypt, and the man you just mentioned, the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. He was the first one to cancel his meeting with Biden when the hospital attack happened. Therefore, I'm going to ask you, sir, do you think these events, like the hospital attack, may change the geopolitical dynamics? Is that a concern you have?
You know, it reminds me of what happened 17 years ago during the second war in Lebanon. I had a concluding discussion with the then Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, in Jerusalem, and she was scheduled to leave the next day to Lebanon to meet with the then Prime Minister of Lebanon, Signora, in order to bring to the United Nations Security Council an agreed resolution that was accepted by us and by the Lebanese. The following morning, there was an aerial attack of Israel which hit a high-rise in the Khanna village in the south of Lebanon. And as a result, there were quite a few people, civilians killed, and the negotiations stopped. And the resolution adoption by the United Nations Security Council was delayed for 2 weeks. And subsequently, it was adopted. And as a result of this, for 17 years, the Hezbollah didn't shoot one bullet across the border into the state of Israel. So we have a certain historical experience in such circumstances. I very much am sad for the events in the hospital. I blame the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad for causing it, and I know they caused it because we have a full proof of the shooting, and they also we have taped a discussion between two commanders in the Islamic Jihad and the Hamas that admit amongst themselves that they did it as a result of a misfired rocket. Mm-hmm. And I hope that it will take a few days and that it will clear up, and we will continue the dialogue with the Egyptian President Sisi, who is a very responsible and trustworthy person. We will continue the dialogue with King Abdullah II, the king of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, a very trustworthy and a decent leader of his country, and will bring in also the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, to join in, together with the Americans, for a continued discussion of how to get rid of the murderers, to make sure that the minimal number of non-involved people are hit.
All right. You're hopeful that perhaps those talks will happen in a few days, though it's been cancelled for today. So you refer to Hezbollah, and I was going to come to that. Fact of the matter is that Hezbollah has attacked Israel in the last few days. As a result, Israel has carried out strikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. Israel has carried out strikes in Syria, which also engaged in fire with your country. Israel has asked its citizens to leave Turkey. And then there is Iran, sir, which has warned of preemptive action and an earthquake that is coming in the next few hours. They say our hands are on the trigger. Is it becoming a war on multiple fronts for Israel?
I think that we have to be a little bit more restrained in the wild and anticipations that we make for what may happen. I think that the Hezbollah noticed that there are two American aircraft carriers with enormous military power very close to Israel and Lebanon. And they have the capacity of responding to any provocation by Iran. So I believe that Hezbollah will be very careful. I will remind you of what once the leader of Hezbollah, Sheikh Nasrallah, said after the confrontation he had with Israel in the Second Lebanese War. He said then that had he known 1% of the reaction of the Prime Minister Olmert, he wouldn't have started. This time the reaction will be 100 times more than what it was then. And I think that while he wants to express his solidarity with the Hamas, he's also aware of the possible ramifications for the Hezbollah, and the Iranians are also aware of the possible ramifications to them. If they will expand the military confrontation, it will not be a war against Israel only, it will be also a war against America, and I'm not certain that they are looking for it.
Okay, that's important. They don't want a war with America. So you have been a prime minister. You understand geopolitics more than most others. So I have to ask you a question about the bigger picture. Iran, Libya, Syria seem to be already involved in this war. Turkey is very angry. Jordan, in fact, is accusing Israel of pushing the region to the abyss. Russia and China are condemning Israel. And then there is US, which is supporting Israel with even military aircraft. Do you believe there's a danger, sir, that many countries could get sucked into this war?
I hope not. I hope not. Listen, I think that Russia feels a little bit comfortable being now losing the focus of the international community for the war in Ukraine by dealing with the events in the Middle East. But I don't think that Vladimir Putin, who I know very well personally, and we always were in good, friendly, personal relations, I don't think that he's particularly interested in now being swept into another military confrontation. They have enough difficulties in Ukraine. They don't need more. And I think that Iran is also using a lot of rhetoric, which is typical of Iran. They are using this rhetoric all the time. They are threatening the state of Israel in time immemorial. They always say Israel has to be liquidated, the Zionist entity doesn't have a right to exist, and so on and so forth. From rhetoric into actual fighting, there is a long way. I believe that Iran will understand the difference. And if need, then America will explain to them. I hope that we will not come to that point, and I think that there is a good chance that we will not come to that point.
All right, good chance that we will not come to it. So do you think Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is losing the perception war and the political battle at home? Because many have called for his resignation for his failure to prevent the Hamas attacks, sir. And I'm talking about Israeli people who are angry with Prime Minister Netanyahu. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know that I happen not to like Netanyahu very much. I don't trust him. I don't think that he's the right person for the job. I think he has failed completely, and it's been a long time. He is the inspirator of this policy to ignore the Palestinian Authority and to build up some kind of a tacit cooperation with Hamas. He made the deal that released more than 1,000 murderers of Hamas in the exchange of one Israeli soldier. And all those murderers that he released from jail are now the leaders of Hamas and are responsible for these vicious attack against the state of Israel. So from the point of view of the Israelis, he failed in providing security for the people of Israel. He lost the trust of the people of Israel. He is not reliable in the eyes of the majority in our country, and his days are gone. It's a matter of a short time we will have another leadership, and the mood of the state of Israel will be a lot more positive, a lot more moderate, and a lot more forthcoming in the desire to achieve the reconciliation and peace between us and the Palestinian Authority after the Hamas will be removed from Gaza.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has strongly condemned Hamas's terror attacks and has expressed strong support for Israel, I beg your pardon. There are many in India who say we stand with Israel. How do you view India's stance, sir? And do you believe there is any room for India to act as a peace broker in this conflict?
I think it will be a little bit presumptuous on my side to propose to Prime Minister Modi, particularly when he's heading towards elections, to get involved in this messy story in the Middle East. But we trust Prime Minister Modi, and we trust the friendship of the Indian people. I was in India just a few weeks ago, and I enjoyed every minute being there. And we have a lot of respect for the expanding and improving relations between Israel and India. And I really genuinely hope that the Indians will understand the need of Israel for security, just as the Indians understood the need to be protected from their neighbors when they were threatened by extremist, fundamentalist, and religious zealots in Pakistan and other countries alongside the border of India. So I'm very surprised and positively surprised by the enormous interest in India for the events in Israel, and we hope that the relations with our two countries and two people will continue to improve in the manner that it already been done in the last few years, and that we'll be able to cooperate on important matters for us and for you.
All right, sir, you have been very, very gracious and generous with your time. Like you said, you did not like some of my questions, but that's my job as a journalist. If we are liked too much, then I think it's a problem. So I take that as a compliment. But I really, really thank you, sir, for sharing your perspective with us. And yes, we are very closely watching these developments here in India.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.